Hi, I'm Pat and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to start doing paint correction on the BMW i8 and follow it up with a ceramic coat by Avalon King. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to click the subscribe button and ring that bell for notifications because I'll be posting BMW i8 content more often on this channel. The BMW i8's already been washed, so the first step in the process is to complete a clay bar. Now these are some of the products I'm going to use, and there'll be a link in the description for each one. We're going to start off with the Quick Detailer by Meguiar's, and also use both the Meguiar's clay bar for some of the smaller spaces, and this larger synthetic clay by Griot's Garage, and make sure we wipe everything down before we then start with the correction process. Now there are some spots on the BMW i8 that require compounding. That means that if there are any imperfections like squirrel marks or scratches, the compound is going to work best for that. Now I have a 3-inch backing plate on this Griot's Garage buffer, if you can see, and I also have a 5-inch backing plate. This is a Meguiar's backing plate, but it will work on the Griot's buffer. So for the 3-inch, I have the orange foam correcting pads by Griot's Garage. These are really thick. I really like these. And I'm also going to use the correcting pad from Meguiar's, which is also an excellent pad. Whenever we complete the process of compounding, we're going to go ahead and use some microfiber towels in order to clean up the surface. For areas that we've already compounded, or for areas that don't require compound, let's say they don't even have an imperfection on them, but we want to polish the surface, I have the Meguiar's polish here. This is the 210. That was the 110. This is the 210. So I also have a Meguiar's MT300 buffer here with the 3-inch pad. I have two buffers, and that way both of us can perform buffing at the same time. Now I use the 3-inch black foam finishing pads by Griot's Garage. I like these. And with the 5-inch backing plate, I have the yellow foam pad by Meguiar's, and a second set of microfiber towels just to remove the polish. Once the clay bar, the compounding, and the polish is complete, I can then move on to using the ceramic coat. So I picked up this Wipeout by Chemical Guys, but you can also make an isopropyl alcohol mixture. They say about 10% alcohol to water, but I decided to try out this Wipeout. I used it on the wheels of the i8, and you'll see I have my original wheels here installed, and that is because the other wheels are still curing. So there'll be a link in the description for the ceramic coating on those wheels. But anyway, after I completely prepare the surface with this, I can start the ceramic coating process. Now the Avalon King Armor Shield 9 ceramic coat, there's a link in the description with a code that you could save a bunch of money. It comes with gloves. It comes with microfiber suede pads that you will put around an applicator sponge, and it also has a cloth here to remove and level out your ceramic product. After that, you leave the car cure for about 3 to 5 days. If you have a garage, this is perfect, and it's a great time to let your car sit and cure. If you can't do that, it's possible the product will not last as long, but this should last at least 2 years with proper maintenance, and that means keeping the car clean, keeping it dry, keeping it covered, or keeping it in a garage. You may get up to 5 years with this product. It's amazing. So let's get started first with the clay bar, and then after that we can mask off any part of the car that we don't want to get any type of compound or polish on. I have the quick jacks here as well so that I can lift the car and get to some of the lower sections. So let's get started. We completed doing the clay bar on the car and then just used a quick mist, a quick detailer, and wipe that up. And we also went through the process of removing a bunch of labels from this glass. So I have a vinyl cutter, and I've gone ahead and made my Instagram name as well as my YouTube name. I had that on the glass, and right now there's quite a bit of residue on there. So what I'm going to do in order to take that off is to use something called Ceraglass. This is a cerium oxide mixture, and there's a link in the description to this. What's really nice about this is it really cleans any residue of the glass and takes it all the way down to the bare glass. What is important about that? Well, I'm actually going to go through the process of ceramic coating not only the car, but the glass, because Avalon King can be used on the glass. So I have a microfiber pad here, and I'm going to load this up with some of this Ceraglass and then clean the glass so that it is prepped for Avalon King. And I can go ahead and do all the glass around the car at this time. That way it's ready to go. And then our next step is to do a final inspection before we go ahead and start with the buffing. Now, in order to use Ceraglass, you shake it up, you cut the tip off the bottle, and then you apply a thin coat to some type of pad, whether it's a microfiber pad or some other pad, and go ahead and rub it in, and then you want to apply it to the glass surface that you want to clean. Now, this may dry very quickly and haze over, so you want to work pretty fast. If you do run out of time and the product seems to lose any type of moisture or liquidity, then you can go ahead and spray it with a water bottle and keep going. Now, this product is easier to remove if it's damp, so I'm going to go ahead and apply some water and use a microfiber towel in order to remove any of the cerium oxide that's left on the glass. Now that we've completed doing the Ceraglass on the glass of the BMW i8, the glass is now ready and prepped for ceramic coat. So our next step is going to be to go ahead and start with polishing and compounding. Now, on a white finish, it's very hard to tell if it needs a compounding. So I'm particularly going to avoid doing any type of compounding until I absolutely need it. Now, I know that there are sometimes little brushes here. I can tell, see if the camera can catch this. Like, there's some marks that are in here. So I don't know what caught this bumper, but this type of thing, I'm going to hit it with polish first. And then if those types of little bumps or scratches in there, if they don't come out with polish, then I can compound that. But I'm not going to go out of my way to do a big compound on this car because it truly doesn't need a full compound. Now, my truck, link in the description below, that needed a full compound on most panels because it'd been so long. So I have my little LED light here, and I can take a walk around and start to look for imperfections. Yeah, I can see some scratches in here. So that will probably need some compound. There are some scratches through here too. Take a look. Yep. So that'll likely need some compound. The darker areas you can tell that you will need compound rather than the lighter areas. Taking a look at the bumper here in the back. Yeah, it's got some marks on there. Definitely from wiping it down after a bath, or even the previous owner, because I didn't spend the time to go ahead and try to take care of all these panels when I first bought the car. I literally wanted to take it out and enjoy it, so I gave it a quick wax with Meguiar's, and it was good to go for a while. But now that I have the time, I want to make sure that I spend that time taking care of the car. The other thing that I want to do is I want to remove the side splitters here, the Ito Motorsport side splitters, because I can take them off and then ceramic coat them separately. They're very easy to take off. I have a link in the description below on how to put them on. So I'm going to go through the same process and take them off. So as I'm looking over the i8, obviously I just want to take my time, polish first, compound if I need to. Once the polishing and compound is complete, the car will be ready to be ceramic coated after I use the Chemical Guys wipeout. But I'm going to spend the next 2 or 3 days prepping this car. All right, we're going to get started with the polishing pad and some Meguiar's 210. We're going to start in the lowest setting, and then we're going to come up to around 3,800 RPM, 3,800 to 4,800 on this Meguiar's MT300. All right, 5 passes, and we'll go ahead and take a look and see how it looks. I did 5 passes with the polish, so now I'm just going to wipe the polish off and see how it looks. It is looking really good. I don't see scratches. There are a few tiny scratches, but nothing that I'm concerned about. At this point, what I'm trying to do is make sure the car is as clean as possible for the ceramic coat, and I don't see any reason to compound this panel. This looks great. And I've just polished this, but there are a few areas here I'm seeing some scratches in. There's one right here. It runs this way. It's going to be hard to see. I know I'm catching a weird reflection in the light, but I could see it. There it is, just to the left of that light. So I got that, and there are a few other ones here. So I'm going to switch to a 3-inch pad on the other buffer, and I will go ahead and use the compound on those areas and then go back over it with polish. And I have a different color microfiber cloth here so that I can keep my compound cloth separate from my polish cloth. So at this point, I can go ahead and go over this entire area with some polish so that I can take the haze out that was just created by the compound. I'm taking a closer look at the panel here, and it's almost impossible to catch any defects except for like some of the scratches. There's one here that's it's sticking out, but other than that, it's kind of difficult for me to see any defects here in the paint, which is terrific. So this process works well, and this is the carbon fiber roof. You could use the same method on the carbon fiber roof that you use on the paint, and that goes for all the black surfaces as well. This is painted, this is painted, this is plastic, but you could still go through the same process. And up front, of course, that's the scoop up there. The black, shiny black part's painted, the other part's plastic, so we don't need to do anything with the louvers. But this is the process you can go through, same with this is painted, in order to correct the scratches and swirls and anything else that's in the paint. So we're going to keep going. So now let's take a closer look at this painted part now that we've done the polish. I'm actually seeing a few little scratches in it that I don't like, especially down near the base. And there are some on the sides, but there's more on the base. So my next step is going to be to put some compound on this particular microfiber applicator pad. It's a little bit more coarse than this fluffy one that I used for the polish. I'm going to go ahead and compound that part, and then I'm going to wipe it off with my compounding pad. Once I'm happy with that, I will go back over it with the polish in order to take any haze out of the paint that the compound left behind. So I'm going to apply my Meguiar's 110 compound to this pad that I'm only going to use for compound. Then I'm going to prime the pad by working the compound into the fibers of the pad. And now that I've made about 5 passes, I'll go ahead and wipe off the compound and then inspect it. So let's take a closer look. Yeah, that's so much better. So I don't have all those scratches that were obvious anymore, but I have a whole bunch of haze, and that's common when you compound something. So I'll go ahead and give it some polish and take care of that haze. Let's take a closer look and give it a good inspection. Yeah, that's looking really sharp. There's still a little bit of haze on it, so I'm going to give it another pass with the polish. And now we'll take another look at it. That's terrific. I'm very happy with this. This is no longer hazy. It has maybe some minor scratches in it, but in broad daylight, you're not going to notice that. With an inspection light, you will, but in this case, this thing looks terrific, and I'm going to leave it as is. Now, if we take a look at the vent area back by the mid-engine, you'll see that in here is a plastic surface, and we obviously don't want to get any polish on this. But this is painted. This is a thin aluminum piece, and all along here and then back here is painted. So I'm going to go ahead and use the microfiber applicator with some polish on this as well. And then all the other areas of the car that are difficult to get to with a buffer, headlights, taillights, anything that's recessed, but not the matte parts. I obviously don't want to polish this part here because this is matte. I don't want to make this as shiny as I can. So just the black parts, the white parts, anything on the car that is painted or even plastic, I can go ahead and polish up if I have to by hand or with my polisher. So some of the areas that I focus on being very careful around are obviously the intake here. This is one area that's obviously plastic. And what I want to do is I want to mask this off with masking tape so that when I get down in here and I polish it, I can use a small foam pad to polish in here, but like in these areas here, I obviously need to use the microfiber pad as well. So I've completed all the compounding and polishing on the i8, both on this side and the other side. So everything from here up is done. And what's really cool is it really turned out nice. I did have a couple scratches in here and they're all gone. The buffer easily fit in this space with the 3-inch pad, and then I was able to do some polishing with the hand applicator, up in here, and it really turned out terrific. So the next step for me is to start with the hood. Now I've gone ahead and masked out the plastic that's in the hood here for the vent, and I'm going to go ahead and start with about a 2-foot by 2-foot section. And what I've learned in doing the work with the other parts of the car is that it's best for me to start with a microfiber pad and compound and make about 5 passes and see how that turns out. So this is the Meguiar's 5-inch microfiber cutting pad, and it works perfectly well with the 110 compound. So I'll have to massage the compound into this in order to prime it, but then we can just go ahead and continue with compounding. I do want to start with compounding just because I found out starting with polishing takes so much more time for me, and now that I've done many panels on the car, I realize that it does need more compound than I thought. Now, compound is important for top surfaces, but not typically bottom surfaces, and that's because of reflection, especially for areas like this, which are dark. I went over it with the microfiber pad and some compound, and then came back for a polish afterward, and it looks terrific. So I'm very impressed with that product, very impressed with the process. Now, some obvious places that stand out to me are right in here. We have a little bit of a scratch, some blemishes. Yeah, right here, there's a couple blemishes that I want to definitely take care of. Right there, and of course down in here. I know that over time and me wiping this area clean, I've created some swirl marks in here. And of course, every now and then you'll get a little bit of a impact with a stone or something like that in here. So these areas are going to be obvious that they need work. But if you're seeing it on the black, it's definitely happening on the white. So in some of these areas here, I've had an impact with a stone right in here, but it's not bad enough that requires me to fill it with any type of touch-up. It's just better that I go ahead and knock that down with compound so it's not as obvious an impact on the paint. Alright, so I've been doing a lot of work off camera, specifically up here in the front end. This takes a lot more time than I thought it would, simply because there are certain areas of the car that I don't want to get any type of brushing against or marring or whatever. I'll show you what I mean. So this is my buffer, and both of my buffers, actually I have the other one over there, have this bell on them, and as they're buffing, this thing's moving around both circularly and oblong. So it's going to cover, a little bit bigger than this area, and they put this on here pretty much to protect you from, that little weight that's spinning around in there. So as you're buffing, you need to be mindful of this, what I call this bell. If you're buffing in this area, you may, bump the bell against that. If you're buffing down here, you may bump the bell up against that. So you want to be very careful, and there's a reason why I use a lot of masking tape here, is to block off areas that I don't want to damage. So for example, here's a 3-inch buffing pad, and if I wanted to buff this area here, obviously I'm going to be right up against here, then that bell may actually impact the light. So you want to tape off the light. It's not hard to do. It's just something you need to be aware of if you're doing this kind of job. Same thing for when you're buffing these areas. So for example, this is plastic, this is plastic, this is plastic. I buffed all of those with compound, and then I buffed them with polish. And the reason why is because there were scratches and nicks in here that I wanted to get out of the car. But I wanted to make sure that while I buffed this, I didn't buff this. I don't want to buff this because it's now not going to have a matte finish anymore. So I originally used the masking tape to mask this part off, and I was able to buff these parts. And I also buffed the silver here as well, the silver trim. And then I had to make sure that my masking tape covered this part. So I've gone ahead and done the grille and the lights, and I've done the white part in here. And then I did the white part on the cheeks of the bumper. So that means that everything else has been compounded and polished except for the black. So I'll just set the camera up, and we'll at least give you some footage of me working on the front bumper, since I've done all the rest of it without the camera running. Buffing this part of the bumper is definitely a challenge because of the curves. So as you're running the buffer, you don't want to hit the bell of the buffer against this. Same as if you're running the buffer against this, you don't want to hit the bell of the buffer against this part. So this curve makes it a definite challenge. So what we did is we masked off this side of the bumper and then went ahead and buffed on that part. And honestly, it looks terrific. So there are no scratches here. Whereas on this side of the bumper, you can definitely see some scratches there. So this will be the next step, is to mask off this side of the bumper and then buff over here. So it definitely does require a few steps. And then once all that compounding is done with the foam pad, then we'll go over it with the foam pad and the polish. And of course the same holds true for this part of the bumper, the white. It's definitely more difficult to see scratches in the white, but we were able to see some in here, especially on the surface that you could see from the top of the car. So being sure to compound this as well as, you know, these pieces here is important versus underneath here. This of course, if it does have some scratches in it, compounding it doesn't make much sense because it's going to be next to impossible to get in there. So that's going to have to be polished by hand with a microfiber hand pad. And we of course did mask off the different areas when we're working on this so we don't again impact that area with the buffer. And the same for, of course, the frozen gray material through here. We don't want to buff this simply because that's going to result in it shining up, and it's a matte finish. So all that was masked off, as well as, you know, all of course the emblems and things like that. So lots of progress being made here in the bumper. And of course here on the side of the car, I've gone ahead and finished up all the compounding and polishing. Some of the areas that were a little bit more challenging were of course inside the door. So I wanted to make sure that I did get this part of the rocker panel, which required me to remove this section here. So it just clips in these spots here. So I just was able to start at that end and pick it up and pull it up. And of course there's a rubber strip here that stays in place. Went ahead and masked this off so that as I did compound and polish, none of that material stuck to the surface. Here. I'm at that stage now where it's time to prepare the i8 for cleaning before I apply the ceramic coat. So I'm going to use Chemical Guy's Wipeout, and this is designed in order to make sure that the paint has no oils, waxes, anything left over from the polishing process or from touching the car. Now I have a very fluffy microfiber cloth here, as well as the Chemical Guy's Wipeout, and I'm just going to go over the entire car everywhere that I plan on applying the ceramic coat. Today I'm going to install a ceramic coat on the BMW i8.